Let's understand various reasons and methods of launching the non cooperation movement. Non cooperation was a movement of passive resistance against British rule, which was initiated by Mahatma Gandhi to resist the dominance of the British government and advance the Indian nationalist cause. The non cooperation movement was a non violent movement that prevailed nationwide by the Indian National Congress under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. This movement took place from September 1920 to February 1922. In his famous book Hind Swaraj in 1909, Mahatma Gandhi declared that a British rule was established in India with the cooperation of the Indians and had survived only because of this cooperation. If Indians refused to cooperate, British rule in India would collapse within a year and Swaraj would come. The Rowlatt Act, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and the martial law in Punjab caused the native people not to trust the British government anymore. Until then, Gandhi believed that justice and fair play of the British government. But after this incident, he felt that the non cooperation with the government in a non violent way must be started. In the meantime, the Muslims in India also revolted against the harsh terms of the Treaty of the Seviers between Allies and the Turkey and they started the Khilafat movement, isn't it? Gandhi also decided to stand beside them. Gandhiji's idea of winning over Muslim support also helped in the non cooperation movement of India. Let's find out how this movement took place across the country. So, how could a non cooperation become a movement? Gandhiji proposed that the movement should unfold in stages. It should begin with the surrender of titles that the government awarded and the boycott of civil services, army, police, courts, and legislative councils, school, and foreign goods. Then, in case the government uses repression, a full civil disobedience campaign would be launched. Through the summer of 1920, Mahatma Gandhi and Shaukat Ali toured extensively, mobilizing popular support for the movement. They moved across various towns and various cities in order to gather support for this mass movement. Many within the Congress were, however, concerned about the proposals. They were reluctant to boycott the council election scheduled for November 1920 and they feared that the movement might lead to popular violence. They felt that council election was the best method to find out a solution. In the month between September and December, there was intense tussle within the Congress. For a while, there seemed no meeting point between the supporters and opponents of the movement. This was happening within the Congress, that the members were divided between two viewpoints. Few of them were the supporters, few of them were the opponents of the non cooperation movement. Finally, the Congress session at Nagpur in December 1920, a compromise was worked out and the non cooperation program was adopted. Okay, now the non cooperation movement is adopted, it is accepted by all the leaders. But how did the movement unfold? Who participated in it? How did different social groups conceive the idea of non cooperation? Right? So, what was the idea, or what did each and every social group think about this non cooperation? And in how was this movement going to go one step after another ahead and take along with it various participants? Okay, so we are going to find out about who were the participants, how did the movement unfold, and which were the different social groups. The non cooperation Khilafat movement began in January 1921. Various social groups participated in this movement. each with its own specific aspiration. That is, each and every group participated, but each one had their own agenda. All of them responded to the call of Swaraj, but the term meant different things to different people. Yes, all the groups, all the social groups did respond to the call of Swaraj, but the word Swaraj meant different to each and every group, social group present in the country. Okay, for example, if you remember, the meaning of the word liberal, all right, stood different to different social groups in Europe. In the same manner over here, the meaning of Swaraj is different for each and every social group. Let's find out on the next slide. Let's discuss about how did the movement unfold in towns. The movement started with middle class participation in the cities, that is, middle class group participated in the cities. Thousands of students left government controlled schools and colleges. Headmasters and teachers resigned, and lawyers gave up their legal practices. Okay, so students left government controlled schools and colleges, headmasters and teachers resigned, and lawyers gave up their legal practice. The council elections were boycotted in most provinces except Madras, where the Justice Party, the party of the non Brahmins, felt that entering the council was one way of gaining some power, something that usually only Brahmins had access to. Okay, so now there were council elections which were boycotted in all the provinces. But what happened in Madras was the group of non Brahmins who had formed a justice party, they felt that it's the right time for them to enter the province elections, because now the Brahmins group is not going to stand for the election and they are not going to get any seat. So it's the appropriate time that they can win the election and put forth their demands and their problems. All right. So it was the Justice Party who did not boycott the election, and they felt that entering the council was one way of gaining some power, something that usually only Brahmins had access to. All right. The effect of non cooperation on the economic front were more dramatic. Foreign goods were boycotted, liquor shops picketed, and foreign cloths burned in huge bonfire. The import of foreign cloth half, that is reduced, it became totally half between the year 1921 and 1922. The value dropped from rupees 102 crores to 57 crores. In many places, merchants and traders refused to trade in foreign goods or finance foreign trade. That is, import of foreign goods, it was reduced to half. Its value came from 102 to 57 crore, and merchants and traders decided that they are not going to trade in foreign goods or finance any foreign trade. They are not going to provide any funds for the foreign trade. As the boycott movement spread and people began discarding imported clothes and wearing only Indian ones, that is khadi, production of Indian textile mills and handloom went up. So, definitely, if people are going to boycott the imported machine made goods, which were cheaper though, but people had decided to boycott it as they were not produced in the country. So, now the demand for the Indian textile was increasing in the market, and even the demand for the handlooms started rising. So, what are the points to remember for the non cooperation movement which started in towns? That the educated middle class led the movement in towns and cities. Educational institutions, law courts, and the council elections were boycotted. Foreign cloths and other goods were burnt in bonfire. People began to use khadi cloths, and government servants resigned from their job. Liquor shops were picketed. These are the key points that you have to remember. Okay. Now, did this movement continue for a year or 2 year or 3 years? What happened? Did people stop the non cooperation movement or did they continue with this non cooperation movement? Well, let us read and find out. This movement in cities gradually slowed down. Okay, it started slowing down for a variety of reasons. All right, let's read these reasons. First one is khadi cloth was often more expensive than the mass produced milk cloth, and poor people could not afford to buy it. Yes, khadi cloth required more time, it consumed more time as it was not prepared on machine. There was more physical labor in it. All right, yes, so that's the reason it was more expensive. All right, and that's the reason poor people could not afford it. Similarly, the boycott of British institutions faced a problem. It posed a problem for us. For the movement to be successful, alternative Indian institutions had to be set up so that they could be used in place of the British ones. For example, the educational institutions, various government offices where these people were working. So, there were no alternative institutions which were set up by the Indians. That's the reason it was uh, creating a problem. These were slow to come up. All these institutions, the Indian institutions, were very slow to build up and to start. All right. So students and teachers began trickling back to government schools, and lawyers joined back work in government courts. So slowly and steadily, students and teachers started going back to school, government schools, and lawyers also joined back their work. So, what are the points that we have to remember for the movement which slowed down in towns and cities? That khadi cloth was often more expensive than the mass produced milk cloth, and poor people could not afford it. Similarly, the boycott of British institutions posed a problem. For the movement to be successful, alternative Indian institutions had to be set up so that they could be used in place of the British ones. These were very slow to come up, and students and teachers began trickling back to government schools, and lawyers joined back work in government courts.